All right, so here's a question that gets asked very often. How much should you save for retirement and how much should you have saved up at different ages? Well, I'm going to go over some guidelines here and talk a little bit about why they recommend these numbers. So, in order to figure out how much you should save for retirement, um, you should have a decent idea of how much you're going to spend in retirement. A lot of people overlook that when they stop working and they are in full retirement. If you work part time or anything else, this doesn't really apply. But if you are in retirement and withdrawing from your retirement account, there's a lot of taxes that just goes away. So things like Social Security taxes, they're gone. That's about 6.25% of your income up to the Social Security wage base. That's just gone. There's about 1.5% of Medicare taxes on your entire income that you don't need to pay either. So assuming that you don't retire early and you're retiring at full retirement age, you're looking at almost 8% of taxes that are just gone. On top of that, you also don't need to save for retirement anymore because you're in retirement. So that knocks a burden off of what you need to bring home in an income or anything else like that. So that's what these estimates are really aimed at. But the guideline basically says that you should aim to have about 70 to 80% of your income, your pre-retirement income, um, replace when you're in retirement. The other big thing that goes away for many people is their mortgage payment. So if you're not renting and you're buying, um, you're either having your house paid off by the time you retire, or you're going to have just a couple of more years of mortgage payments, and then that goes away. Now, if you took a loan out for a house um, right before retirement, you're sitting at a 10, 15, 30-year loan, right? So that doesn't go away. But if you're staying put, uh, chances are you're very close to paying it off if you have not already paid it off. So a lot of these assumptions kind of go into that. So let's take a look at what you should have saved up by different age groups and how much you would have had to save from your income to get to these places. So basically what they're saying is that if you're at 30, you're just turning 30, you should aim to save one time your salary. So these numbers that are in the chart here, they're multiples and they're multiples of salaries. So by the time that you're 30, if you have worked for a couple of years, you went to school, you graduated, you might have a graduate degree, but you're graduating, you're working a couple of years now, and let's say that you're making $75,000 a year. The suggestion is that by age 30, you should have saved up 75,000. They suggest this because you need a little time to kind of get settled, to furnish a place, because chances are you're graduating from school, you're moving into a new place, whether you're renting or something else. You need to furnish it, things like that. But within those first couple of years of working, you should aim to have saved about one time your salary. And to get there, you only need to save about 15% of your paycheck, assuming that there's a match and that you're going to get roughly 8 to 9% return on that investment. And that should happen if you're putting it into an aggressive portfolio, since you have a long ways to go. By age 40, though, you can see that the chart's recommending that you should have 3 times that amount saved up. So if your salary, it's been pretty steady, growing 2 to 3% a year, by age 40, at $75,000 a year, they're saying that you should have about $225,000 saved up. If you're earning $50,000 a year because you live in an area where it's less expensive and therefore income is a little bit lower, or you just don't want the stress of a high-paying job and you're earning $50,000 a year, you should have about $150,000 saved up by age 40. When you get to 50, you're aiming to have 5 times your salary saved. So depending on how much you earn, that's what you're aiming to have saved up. And then what they're saying is that by the time that you retire at age 65, roughly, you should aim to have 10 times your salary saved. So if you're earning $50,000 a year, you should have about $500,000 saved up. If you're earning 75,000, you should be at $750,000. This is a very rough guideline, and in fact, it's somewhat conservative. If you are actually making a much higher income than that, let's say you're making 150,000 a year, they're actually going to suggest that you have a minimum of 10 times saved by the time you retire, and you really should be aiming for 12 to 13 times. And the main reason for that is that as your income goes up, so does your taste, your spending, and things like that. And people at the higher income range, we need to have a bit more put away to kind of maintain that lifestyle. So let's break down why these suggestions are in place. Social Security is meant to replace about 30% of your income. If you kind of look at your Social Security payment statements on an annual basis and calculate out how much that is on a yearly basis, you're going to find that it's going to replace about 27-28% of your income. So that's why, it's approximately 30. And then in the model, your savings from your IRAs, your 401ks, after-tax savings, whatever, is supposed to make up the other 40%. So the aim here is to replace roughly 70% of your income, up to 80, depending on how aggressive you're getting. So back to our chart initially, you can use this to figure out if you are roughly on track at your different ages, or if you do need to do a little bit more savings to get caught up. Again, these are rough guidelines, but I find that they're really useful to have a target of where you should be at. Clearly, this doesn't show you what other people have done and where they're at, but I'm hoping that you found this little financial bite helpful. All right, see you later.